The first speaker will be Mrs. Vartika Shukla, Executive Director Technical, EIL. Madam, may I request you to please come in.
Sorry, have you put the presentation? Okay, before we start, before the presentation comes online, a very good morning to everybody, and I'm very grateful on behalf of EIL and the complete oil industry, if I may be permitted to speak on their behalf, that we have been invited to this forum to express and share where the industry is going and what interventions are required to keep abreast of the need for the nation, as well as integrate this industry with the need globally. So, where's the presentation? I have to manage from here? Yes, ma'am. Okay, so this is not relevant. Okay. Sorry about that, sis. So I will, the discussions which happened in the morning, and respected Shri Goel expressed the need and the impetus which the industry has to be given as of today, and the subsequent informal discussions that we had. It is recognized that the industry has to cut across various mindsets, it has to cut across various needs and build up a resource pool which is integrated with various automation techniques, instrumentation, softwares, platforms, dashboards, and so many other interventions, such that it becomes a globally competitive in the environment. So before I begin, I will just in the beginning of the presentation touch upon where we are in the refining industry, see how the refining industry is going to go forward, what are the various ways to keep it competitive, how it is to be aligned with the nation's need as well as technology. It's a little technical in the beginning, and coupled with that is the need for exploration, building data repositories, integrating that with the great impetus which the government has in mind to increase both oil, gas and unconventional resources, develop them, the CBM, the shale, and as many as that we can lay our hands on. So just to see where we are today, we are the third largest energy consumer in the world after China and USA. And China has surpassed USA some time back. USA was the #1 energy consumer. And with our growing need, growing economy, growing population, it would not be, the time's not very far where we may, vie for the position wherein we become the largest energy consumer. But that has its lot of challenges on all fronts. In terms of oil and petroleum products as well, we have now ranked third in the world. We are also the third largest importer of crude oil, and as the Honorable Prime Minister mentioned in the Petrotech event, that we have to become as far as possible self-sufficient in terms of energy and reduce our crude oil imports from 10%, from about 77% which was there, which has now gone up, reduce it by 10% by 2022. That's a very, very tall task considering the growth in the demand. Our domestic crude production is stagnant. There are measures to actually get larger recoveries going for EORs, and the consumption of oil has increased steadily at a growth rate of 8.3% last year, which was about 5% in the earlier years. The refining capacity is standing at 234 million tons, and we have a significant role in the world market. We are exporters of petroleum oil products, and why I'm bringing this out is essentially that with that we get the network of the consumers globally, the demands of the consumers. And to just give you an example, when the Fukushima disaster happened in Japan, we were one of the countries which had fuel oil to export to Japan, and some of our refineries made significant GRMs on account of that. So it is important, therefore, in the businesses of today to integrate the industry globally. So that's the pertinent point, which means to say that while we make our own industry robust, enlarge it, we must also retain our presence in the global arena. Now, there are several challenges which the industry faces, and while the heading does mention refineries, however, there is it can be extended to oil and gas in general. The first is the health of the people and the environment needs. And the environment needs, the two things which are really governing the decisions and the technology in the world. One is climate, and the other is the geopolitical issues, which really are not in the technology domain per se. So cleaner, lighter cooking fuel oils is the thrust where the industries have to focus upon. We have seen quite recently the the presentations and the impetus which the government has also given to the penetration of EVs. So penetration of gas, which is lowering the carbon footprint, penetration of hybrids and EVs, which are going to adversely impact some sectors and flourish some other sectors, and the shifts in goods transportation, particularly building railways across, making networks more smooth, the introduction of GST which has happened. So all these are going to change the percentages of each product from the refinery. Once this happens, the refinery is going to be constrained, the refinery is going to be challenged, and the refinery and all other industries have to react very fast. The last of all is the fuel oil, which is another product which is there in the oil and gas sector, wherein the sulfur levels are likely to go down because of the bunker fuel which goes into ships. Besides, of course, the introduction of gas as a fuel for shipping industry. So all this brings in a lot of challenges into the oil and gas industry, which have to be addressed quickly, decisively, with technology and foresight. Now, one way to remain competitive is to integrate the industry, integrate the businesses, if I may put it like that. So, competitive advantage, value creation is essential to sustain profitability, to integrate, rationalize, insulate oneself from the geopolitical issues and price volatility. Economy is a driver, policy is also a driver. Where we are going towards making India clean by way of Swachh Bharat, building infrastructure, expanding the automotive sector, smart cities, etc. So all these are going to require products whose demand has to be met in the most profitable way, and demand will change and vary as the pushes are there towards building up the economy. And technology, as we also discussed informally in the morning, is actually changing the landscape of the industry, like 3D printing, engineering plastics, also capturing CO2, etc. from the flue gases. So these are all technologies. Now, just to put in perspective, when we see India and we see the globe, and we look at the petrochemical sector, the per capita consumption of the plastic products today in India is about 11 kgs, And in the northern part of the country, it is as low as 7, and the southern part, where you have a robust automotive industry, it's slightly higher. When you compare it to the consumption in US, it is about 68 in US, and on a world average, it's 45. So we have to meet these demands as well. And unless and until we integrate the businesses, it would be difficult to meet. I am building up, we are trying to here build up a need for why we should be moving towards a faster, reactive, accurate, and decisive kind of platforms for the managements and the operators and everybody who is concerned, all the stakeholders which are concerned in the industry. So I will, I think, move on from this slide. This is essentially looking at the aspects of technology interventions into improving competitiveness in the refineries by way of value addition. And just to put in a point, that if you see on the right hand side, and we see of the demand as predicted for the products, it is expanding almost 2.5 times from 2010 to 2050. And these are the kind of complexities that will come about in the processes. So now then, with this backdrop, what are the challenges that the industry faces? It is faced with the challenges of meeting higher margins. These operations are very low margin operations. Many of the smaller refineries world over are shut because of the lowering of margins, and not really because of the crude, but per se the value addition across the feed and the product. There is a need to maximize the output from the existing assets, increase its efficiency, and enhance the productivity of workers, and so that in the same space they can produce better. Many of the plants, many of our own assets in the oil and gas, whether we talk of upstream, midstream, or downstream, are essentially old. They have issues in terms of maintenance, they have issues in terms of replacement without any ROI. These, once you have to do a one-to-one replacement, you've got to do it for basically sustaining operations. You don't have an ROI. So you need more skill, you need experience, and you also need tools to make sure that it is operated in a safe, integrated, and sustained manner. The process industries also have to take decisions. In a dynamic environment, there would be varying operating conditions, alternate feedstocks, which could be cheaper but poorer in quality, so the conditions have to change to get the best efficiency point. There would be disturbances in the process while keeping the product of the same quality. There would be variations which the process has to absorb. Shifts in product margins. Today we have one product which makes better margins, and tomorrow there could be something else which has more demand, and hence there is a difference in price elasticity, and demand elasticity would play into these factors to make decisions. Changes in product and utility prices. What is optimum? For example, there is, as we are aware, there is an excess electricity available, which is cheap electricity from coal-based power block. But the way most of the oil sector produces electricity is based on the captive fuel. And there is always a decision making whether we buy it from the grid or we produce our own. So things of that sort, decision making tools, real-time decision making tools are extremely important to, on a day-to-day basis sustain. So with this, how do we bring in automation? And what is it that will add value to the oil and gas sector? 4.0, Industry 4.0 is not new. It is to most of the audience, it is there. And it is a new revolution which has to be adapted and adopted. As part of the Government of India, NIC has a lot of platforms which promote the e-platforms in various aspects even today, like when we are doing procurement and our oil sector companies are doing procurement, they are all on platforms, and they have all, what they have brought in is speed, transparency, and to both the consumers and the end users. So increasing the power of computing, meaning reconciliation of data, things coming back for decision making at a pace faster than one could ever imagine, intelligence coming back from the assets, and the so-called Facebook of machines. These are the aspects which have to be linked together to make the industry more flexible and resilient towards change. So how do we start? We start by integrating a process which is unconnected, totally separated out in various silos, and we connect them together through the digitization. It involves innovative internet and communication technologies. And some time back we have had this discussion with some teams wherein we found that young engineers do not want to join the oil and gas industry. They find, well, it's not what fetches them money and what fetches them the IT tag. So herein we would say that the automation of the oil and gas sector is going to add the so-called glamour in the life of the youngsters, and also they are very skillful. I mean, we also learn from our own children, so they are very skillful. So that skill can be energized and channelized to transform this sector into a completely different domain. So as I mentioned, global perspective, and the oil and gas sector, it needs real-time interventions. It is so dynamic. It needs a lot of feedback, feed forward, whatever can be given to enhance the operations. The industry will definitely accept it. It needs, of course, more accurate and human support. However we talk about machines, however we talk about intelligence, whatever makes it is human intelligence. So at the end of the day, the people do matter, and they have to be therefore trained, skilled, and the right skilling should put the right person in the right place. That is extremely necessary. So this is a quick sort of roadmap which the world has not exactly rolled back, it is going back. It's a peek into the history and the journey of the industry, and how we have today from the industry 1.0 to 2.0 as we began, and today we are looking at the intelligence age, post the age of information, which was up to the typically 2010, it is said. So the case in point, this begun by the German government in 2006, and it was essentially to digitize manufacturing. And they have a mandate, and they have to invest about $40 billion into the industry by 2020. So, and that stems from the fact that when the automotive or the manufacturing industry in Europe, in Germany in particular, had to compete with the Japanese manufacturing industry, they wanted to bring up their systems in production to bring in accuracy and productivity, and to adapt to that, these interventions were sort of focused by the government. In India also we have the Digital India campaign and the Digital India program, which is essentially to transform the industry, empower the society. It's a knowledge-based economy, and we also are committed to create tools under digitization by investing about $15 billion by 2020, and also take a significant share of the global economy, which is typically 5 to 6% is what is targeted. So all these would bring us in a position where we are truly able to have the same level of competence as would any developed country. So these are just some pictures to on the side to see as to how the technology has evolved, and whether it is medicine, whether it is manufacturing, and whether we see mobility. And we know companies like Tesla who are actually launching the driverless cars, and there are driverless trucks, and so many vehicles which are running, and the cost curve of the LiDAR, which actually brings in the data and automates them, it's come down significantly. So all these, this is what is happening globally. So we recognize it, and unless we adapt to it, we don't want to be left behind. I mean, that's the whole point. So the building blocks, coming back to Industry 4.0, it is, if we start from the top and go clockwise, it is talking about big data analytics, automation of in robotics, data analytics, simulation. It's very important, putting in parameters which are actually from operations, putting back into the simulation so that you get a real assessment of how things would be. System integration, horizontal, vertical, all integrated system, IIoT, and another very important point, cyber security. This I would also touch upon at the end. See, accepting any change, any new thing for any industry, and hence any teams, any people, is a very challenging thing. So getting acceptance, the usual glitches and hitches and kind of reservation comes. Is it safe? Will my data go here and there? Will people hack my data? Will I be able to, my competitor or wherever? So this is a very important point to be addressed. Unless this is addressed and people are satisfied, the adoption of these interventions is going to become a major hurdle. Manufacturing and augmented reality. And in the last few months back, we had a conference on wherein there were virtual platforms and people could actually simulate it and have operator training there. So these are all needing to be in place, because nobody today in the industry has a spare plant where the operator can go and operate it and check it up. Well, does it do what I wanted it to do? So all the interventions of virtual reality are going to definitely play a role in the skilling of the workforce. So all through, from managing energy, logistics, assets, intelligent networks, augmented reality, predictive maintenance, and in short, a kind of a smart factory. This is the end-to-end oil and gas value chain which one has to create. So one has to first aspire to create, and then look at each and every nitty-gritty of it and have a work plan to build this up. So what does it do? It basically, the digital big world actually is likely to become the real world. This is how, if we see many areas, it will impact automotive for sure, which will have impact on jobs. But the benefits are there, and anyway the technologies are there. So there is no point in sort of brushing it aside. It is time that we looked at it and build our own industry up. So on a broader view, we have automation beginning from the oil wells to production to refinery to transportation and right up to the dispensing stations of the retail outlets. And all the interventions which we have on the Industry 4.0 have to be integrated seamlessly back to back to make this kind of a complete end-to-end solution. The implication is in the oil and gas sector, particularly in robo-assisted production, predictive maintenance, energy efficient production, whereby reducing the CO2 footprints, and reducing the impact on the environment. Equipments and machine as a service, big data, continuous feed and production simulation, and smart supply networks. This is very quickly, mostly we have touched on manufacturing. Some of the challenges would be it will replace a lot of human work. So therefore, the skills have to be upgraded and altered to suit whatever is the needs. Man-machine has to collaborate. No machine can work without the human interface. Intervention of technology, 3D printing, augmented reality, etc. And on the engineering front, computer-based simulations, extended use of cloud computing, and crowdsourcing. So this also brings in the dimension of when we look at Make in India. When we do this all here, it is also giving impetus to job creation. It is giving impetus to making ourselves self-sustaining, self-sufficient in almost all skills. So maybe we have dependency on energy, but we need to bring out the best of us such that we are dependent on our own technology and resources into at least the automation sector. So these are the workplace interventions in maintenance, production controls, and innovative things. So innovation is also going to play a very important role because things will change. They are changing so fast that corporates, managements find it very difficult to adapt. Somewhere I was reading, it's like the input that comes in is 4 to 5 times higher than any ordinary human being can react. So in that kind of a, as they call the VUCA world, how are we going to react? So it's a big challenge for corporates and management. These are the tools which would help bring in faster decision making. Smart factories, wherein we have things like making smart equipment, wherein let's say we have rotating equipment, and each and every vibration, each and every acoustics comes back to the operator such that before the breakdown actually happens, it can be intervened. Put in kind of a historical data wherein the uptime has to be increased. And if people who have come from the refining sector know that we are in the 4th quartile when Solomon benchmarks our refineries. And one of the challenges that the refinery faces, this is only for the refineries, it is true for the complete value chain of the oil and gas sector, that we have lower uptime. We take more shutdowns. So interventions of wherein data from smart equipment can help in decision making, also help in creation of redundancy. So one can always weigh between investments in a redundancy and a spare vis-a-vis the loss of production. Where do you value add? So these are kind of decision making that will come in handy once we have these data. Everything is about having the data. So we have these major headlines. I'm just going to leave it here. That basically, wherever we read that this is the next, as you see, data is the next oil, they say. So essentially, it's a reality, it's a challenge, and we need to work around it. So it is going to be definitely all pervasive. It will affect and sort of help in the economy, the individuals who are associated, the businesses at large, the society, as well as integrate us globally. So we have some opportunities, therefore, for the workforce. The qualification of the existing workforce has to change, and they have to upgrade their skills and develop new skills so that the industry as such can remain competitive. And improvement through the use of robots wherever possible. Creation of new jobs for highly skilled workers in the area of planning. Everything, the micro planning becomes very essential. Since we are talking in seconds and milliseconds and even nanoseconds in some places. So interventions of new technology, expansion of low-skilled work by use of robo and assisting systems, extensive control and monitoring of workers' behavior, performance, and increased expectations regarding individual flexibility. So, one role may not stay for very long. So, multi-skilling and movement from one role to the other. So, upgrade these skills such that they are flexible and adaptable to change. And for the society, we have to look very carefully what could be the increase in the outsourcing, crowdsourcing. All these aspects may hamper and affect the industries. Loss of low-skilled workers who are non-digital. So it is therefore necessary to create awareness, create skilling, have that knowledge base such that they can live up to the expectation of the industry. So two things are important. One is one has to enhance the awareness. Awareness comes first. Before anything is accepted, people have to be aware that yes, these are interventions which are for their own good, for the good of their own industry, and they are going to lift their delivery, and it's like the feel-good kind of thing which humans need to deliver better than their roles that are assigned to them. And second is the building up of a robust cybersecurity, which management and the people at large are going to look forward to. So with this I end, and I thank everyone for your kind attention. Thank you.